Hi guys, why does the BBC invite on people who represent shady organisations and either not force them to reveal who funds them or add the explainer that these think tanks have taken money from questionable sources? Reem Ibrahim was invited to speak on behalf of the IEA as part of a panel on the Politics Live show. Now, her organisation believes that the private sector is a solution to most problems. Her think tank believes in the abolition of the NHS as a state-run body, for example. She was asked by George Monbio who funds the IEA, and his question was met with giggles. Have a listen to this.
I don't think that growth is a bad thing. I think growth is a very positive thing. It's very politically charged. Both parties seem to think that they have an idea of how to get there. But ultimately, if we're actively implementing policies that are not going to be supporting the way in which the economy is growing, we've got to stop talking about growth in that way.
Well, of course you want to rip down regulations. Of course you don't care about the natural world. Because you're from the Institute of Economic Affairs, which is funded by oligarchs and corporations. Yes, and I should be. And actually the BBC should be as well, because the BBC says that the funding and affiliations of the organisations which come onto its programmes should be revealed. But the IEA pointedly and continually refuses to reveal who funds it. When we find out who funds you, we discover it's oil companies, it's tobacco companies, it's George, the most ruthless and rapacious companies on earth, and you are their spokesperson.
This is some kind of wild conspiracy that he's incredibly obsessed with. And look, I appreciate that this is the kind of thing that you're obsessed with individually. I would like to actually talk about the policy matters at hand, because I actually would like to talk about the way in which people in this country are suffering.
And on whose behalf are you talking?
Myself, I'm talking about myself.
And you just happen to be employed by the Institute of Economic Affairs,
look,
which happens to be funded by oligarchs and corporations.
George, don't dispute her motives. That's what her motives are.
Let's talk about effectively what George is saying is he thinks that I'm being funded by dark lobbyists because he doesn't think that I believe the things that I'm saying, which I think.
No, he didn't say that. He said that the Institute for Economic Affairs is funded by dark money, and he's questioning why you're on a panel speaking on their behalf. Because that's what you are there. You're not there in some private capacity. You're there to represent, you're a senior member of the IEA. So that's why you're there, to push their narrative. But we'll get to their narrative in a moment.
It's incredibly offensive for you to sit here and tell me that I don't believe the things that I'm saying. I come from countries that have been decimated by socialism. I believe in individual liberty. I believe in free markets, and I believe in people having the power to spend their own money without governments taking it from them. So I'm incredibly offended by this insinuation.
And like the other dark money think tank staff,
all right,
lavishly funded.
George, just two things. So hang on. Two things, George. We have also interrogated this at length on a programme some time ago, and both you and Reem are here to present your distinct views. It's not objective, it's presenting your distinct views. Let's...
Absolutely pathetic from the BBC. Why did the BBC not explain to listeners, to viewers, this individual represents the IEA, is invited on as a senior member of the IEA, and explain what the IEA want to achieve and who funds the IEA? Well, they couldn't, because the IEA doesn't explain who actually funds them, don't disclose this information. And what you see here from the BBC host defending the panel guest. Now, I mentioned before the problems with the IEA. It says here, according to Wikipedia, you can find this information yourself, it's freely available. The Institute of Economic Affairs is a right-wing free market think tank registered as a UK charity, associated with the New Right. It goes on to say the IEA subscribes to a neoliberal worldview and advocates positions based on this ideology. It published climate change denial material between 1994 and 2007 and has advocated for privatization of elements of and the abolition of complete government control of the National Health Service in favour of a healthcare system with market mechanisms, something like the United States. These are the people who were pouring poison, or maybe not poison, but had the ear of Liz Truss. And she tried to put some of these people into the House of Lords. It goes on to say it has received more than £70,000 from the tobacco industry. Of course, they didn't disclose this information. It had to be found out in other ways. Although it does not reveal its funders. The IEA officers have been recorded offering cash for access. Yes. And the IEA's headquarters is in Westminster. It used to be based, I believe, at 55 Tufton Street. So this is an organisation who was trying to influence Liz Truss and push their ideology through Liz Truss. And members are invited on to the BBC live show, and the BBC doesn't explain who they are, what they represent, and who funds them. This is a massive failure. Now, maybe it's not a failure, maybe it's by design. Invite people on who represent very shady organisations, who don't tell people where their funding comes from. And when organisations like Open Democracy do a bit of digging, they discover it's very sinister organisations, the fossil fuel industry, tobacco industry. And of course, these panelists are invited on to push a narrative. They're not invited on as members of the public giving their opinion. Otherwise, they would invite on members of the public to give their opinion. The people on these panels represent something. Either organizations for the environment, political organizations, but generally, if they are representing a think tank or some organization, the funding of that organization is transparent, not the IEA. They don't want you to know who funds them, but they want you to believe in something, in the ideology of neoliberalism, the ideas, the policies that were being pushed by Liz Truss and others. It's an absolute disgrace that the BBC continues to do this. This isn't the first time this has happened. It has happened on a regular basis. They invite people on who represent very shady organizations, and they don't disclose this to the public. They're supposed to be a public broadcasting organization. The public deserve to know these things. Otherwise, if you don't want to disclose this information about the panelists, then don't invite them on. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.